the difference that the instrument makes, a great instrument, is that in a performance like that, especially a high pressure situation, the great instruments can just give you something, this extra energy, extra inspiration that that's other cellos can't. So especially for solo playing, you know, to just draw on the inspiration of the cello can often be a very powerful thing for the audience and for the performer.
Hello, this is Cello in Pauta. I am Kaique Fontes.
I'm Guilherme Monegatto.
I am Wallison Cruz.
And I'm Guilherme Monegatto.
So today in Cello in Pauta I have a really special guest, Zlatomir Fung. So thanks so much. That's really awesome for us, really.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Okay, Zlatomir, I think that first you can introduce yourself to the Brazilian students and talk a little bit about your career and your highlights, because for those who don't know, Zlatomir was the youngest cellist to win the first prize in the Tchaikovsky competition, so you have a lot of things to tell.
Sure. So I started playing the cello when I was 3 years old, and I got very interested in pursuing a career as a musician when I was 12 or 13. And I've since then been very interested in trying to push myself and do competitions. So I did a lot of competitions from the ages of 13 to 18 and 19. And then last year I did the Tchaikovsky competition, where I was lucky to get the first prize. And I think that's the end of my competition career for now. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember in an interview they say that, and yeah, I mean, you said if Monegatto, that you are really special guest too, and we'll talk about, first of all, I remember after you won the Tchaikovsky competition, you gave this interview that said about what you think when you perform, like to really enjoy and be happy to be able to do that. So for this first part, we have like 4 big questions. And the first one is, based on everything that we saw about you in your interviews, for you, what has been an artist in the 20th century? And based on that, what is performed in the 20th century?
That's a very interesting question. I would say that now more than ever, as musicians, as performers, what it means to be an artist is we have to constantly be looking for ways to make what we do relevant to audiences. Because much of the music that we wrote was written in a different time, in a time when it had different purposes. Like, for example, if it was written for a king in a court in Europe, and it was probably only meant to be played for them. But now we have the chance to share it with many people. So I think it's a lot of it is finding ways to frame the music, frame the importance of live performance for the audiences today. And I think as performers, it's very important that we remember why live performance is special, because now we have YouTube and everything on the internet, and people can go hear wonderful recordings of things for free on their own time. But we have to continue to advocate for live performance as a communal experience where people are able to come together and focus on one thing for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, and have all their energy be focused on appreciating that work of art. And I think that's something that's very special and quite rare nowadays for human beings to really come together and agree on something. There's so much disagreement now, but I think like when we're in a concert, we can all agree that Bach is moving and beautiful, and that's a powerful idea, I think.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. And what do you think about this, our life after this virus situation? Because we are in the current transformation about the live music and everything else. So what do you think about that?
It's very hard to say now. I think that a lot of people I've talked to seem to have the opinion that once the virus ends, once the pandemic is finished, we're going to be able to just go back to normal and play our concerts and life will be the same. But I think that in a way, the world will be a very different place when this ends. I think that this kind of pandemic situation is something that it hasn't happened for about 100 years. So essentially no one remembers the last time it happened. So I think that now it's going to really be something that we carry with us as human beings, as a collective species. And of course, it's going to be more difficult to have performances because there's always going to be this fear that collecting in big groups will be a risk. But I think it's important for us, the most that we can do as musicians is continue to devote ourselves to our art and the music and be ambassadors for why we think it's important and why it still has a place in society. And then whether the audiences come or not, I think is a question that, of course, will be left up to fate. But in a way, we're always going to be communicating with people because music has that power, whether it's over live streams or in live performance.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that the way that we enjoy live concerts will change a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah. Okay, so Guilherme, do you have something to tell about that? Because we were talking about that last week, and
Oh yeah, I mean, it can be like in parentheses, but I actually just got a letter from, like, not a letter, but a like mass email from the Budapest Festival Orchestra, and it's very interesting because Ivan Fischer created like a little manifesto on how orchestras should change to accommodate the new what is about to become of the world, so it's very, I should share that with you guys. But yeah, it's pretty much saying that like orchestras will probably become big musical groups that should be divided and like play chamber music in people's home and play all kinds of music, not just classical music, but even like jazz and world music and things like that. It's very interesting. I should share with you guys.
That's very interesting, actually. Did Fischer mention anything about, I mean, did he say that he feels that orchestras will, some of them will disappear, some of them won't survive the crisis?
Well, I think it wasn't in a bad connotation kind of way. I think he was mainly like reinforcing that that the orchestra of the future should be able to play anything, not just symphonic repertoire. And then he also was considering the reform of the rules of the habits of like the hierarchy in orchestra, and also like reconsider the way auditions work and different forms of, I can say it's incredible, because I can't just read the whole thing now, like and like offer a creative and personal music environment that serves the community with a wider repertoire and varied forms of concerts. So it's really incredible, and I think it needs to be shared at some, like, to everyone. It's really incredible. He's an incredible mind.
For sure.
yeah, and it's funny because everything is changing right now. Like I said, like adapting to this new virus situation. And Zlatomir, you're going to participate in the virtual Cello Summer Festival, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So what can you tell about that? Because I mean, I don't know if it was something that just was created after this virus situation or before, but I mean, maybe that will be the way that we can do things right now.
Right. Well, there was actually one of my former teachers someone who was my chamber music coach when I was 10 and 11 years old. She sent me a message on Instagram, and she said, I would love if you could be a part of this virtual cello festival. And I think she came up with the idea after everything with the virus happened. And I've also seen that there are a few other programs that are going to be sort of like summer online festivals, which is a kind of a cool idea. And some of them are even so intense that, like, for example, they meet for breakfast over Zoom, and they'll eat together with the computers on to try to recreate the feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's a way to try to do this right now, because so different. Like I said, it's something that we cannot even imagine that it's really happening right now. So it's totally. I mean, it's hard. Okay.
Yeah.
So our next question will be made by Wallison.
Hello, Zlatomir. It's an enormous pleasure to talk with you today. We are such great fans. And I'm going to ask you about the repertoire you have chosen for Tchaikovsky's competition and its importance. Well, personally, my favorite concerto is the Shostakovich Second, and I would like to hear if the choices you've made for the competition were somehow personal, or you thought about it. What can you say about that?
Well, thank you so much, Wallison. It's so nice to speak with you all. I would say I for competitions, I really like to think a lot about what I want to play, because I think often in competitions, competitors will choose the same sorts of pieces, and I personally believe that this puts you at a disadvantage. It puts you at a disadvantage to play a piece that many other people are playing, because then the jury will automatically compare the performances. Whereas if you play a piece that is more unique, a piece that you're going to be the only one performing, then you have a chance to show that piece and show yourself as an artist for who you are without comparison. And so that was sort of my thought process with picking the repertoire for Tchaikovsky. But of course, also it has to come from a place of love, and you have to love the music. And it's so nice to hear that the Shostakovich Second Concerto is your favorite. It's also a piece that's very, very dear to me, and I thought it was also very special to be able to play it in St. Petersburg, because that city has such a strong relationship to Shostakovich and his life, his music.
Actually, I have a question for you about the Shostakovich. How fast did you learn and memorize that?
Oh, well, I would say I started learning it the competition was in mid-June, and I started learning it in the beginning of March, and then actually the memorization was quite difficult for me. The piece is a bit tricky because you've played it, have you? Or, oh.
I played in the orchestra.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, even in the orchestra part, because the cello section part is very complicated in the second movement, how you have to constantly change the time signatures. So it's one of those pieces that you have to know how to conduct it before you can memorize it. You have to know all the time signatures. So I only really memorized it a few weeks before the competition. So it was quite stressful.
And actually, like, I have a parenthesis question because I want to know if this is true. So, like, I had a summer that I had lessons with Richard Aaron, and in my first lesson, he told me that you were the #1 cellist in the world at the time. I think you were 17. And I didn't know of you, but like, of course I didn't believe him until I saw you. But he told me that you memorized Penderecki Divertimento in 6 days and perform in the Heifetz. Is that true? I want to know, like, firsthand.
No, that's not true. I think, I mean, I love Richard Aaron dearly, but he exaggerates things. I probably learned the Penderecki in like a normal amount of time, like a month or a month and a half, something like that.
And for the Tchaikovsky competition, I mean, it was like a huge repertoire. So you have some technique to try to really be confident to the memorizing of all of this. So have something to they use, like a technique or a strategy to memorize.
I think that the best way to prepare for something like that is to perform as much as possible. And for me, the most important thing when you do a competition is that you know the pieces you're going to play very well. So I actually chose my repertoire for the competition based in part on what I had performed a lot already in the 6-7 months before the competition. So like the Barrios Sequenza, the Brahms E minor cello sonata, those pieces I had performed about 10 times in various recitals. So I felt that I was very confident performing those pieces, and I knew them very, very well. You know, I kind of felt that they were a part of me. So I didn't have to focus as much energy on preparing them. So I would say, yeah, not necessarily any specific techniques, but just the experience of performing is very powerful for me.
And of that repertoire, there is something really new for you, like something that, I mean, Shostakovich, the second concerto, you say that you learned some months before, but there was another piece that was really new for you.
Yes, actually, the Arensky 4 pieces for cello and piano was quite new to me. I started learning it in around the same time, maybe early April, late March, something like that.
Okay, so we have our third question that made by Kaique.
So my question is, what do you think about the tradition of cello competitions?
Well, thank you so much, Kaique. It's so nice to be here again. Yeah, I would say that you know, I think the world has changed a lot in the last 50 years. The music world, in my opinion, you know, 50, 60 years ago, the music world was more of a close circle because we didn't have the internet, we didn't have all these ways to communicate with each other so quickly. So, so developing a career was more a question of who you knew, and it's when you know, when someone recommended you someone who was powerful, then they had the ability to get you concerts and create opportunities for you. But nowadays it's I think it's a little more difficult because, first of all, there's so many people that are so talented, you know, all across the world. And second of all, we have, you know, YouTube and Instagram, social media and everything. So everyone is always putting themselves out there, recording themselves and trying to sort of push through through the noise of you know, social media life. So now I think the tradition of competitions emerged a lot in response to that, because it became more difficult to see who was really the real deal and who was, you know, not. So to be very, you know, straightforward about it, but of course, you know, it's not always that straightforward. So I think that, you know, in the end, the competitions are not such a great thing for music, but you know, I think that they emerge because it's also becoming very difficult for people to build careers in other ways. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
I mean, that's exactly what Timati always told me. Like, because I always told him, like, I hate competitions, and he was like, you know, but you got to put yourself out there, because that's one of the main ways to get stuff done. You know, like to to get your name out there.
Right, right. Yeah, and for me, like doing competitions was always more a question of pushing myself personally, and of course, you know, getting myself out there. But it wasn't so much like, oh, I want to prove that you know I can win this competition or whatever. You know, I first of and foremost, it's just a matter of loving the music and wanting to share it with people. So.
Yeah, and
Yeah, because
sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So in Brazil, we just don't have cello competitions. We have like this young solos in 2 or 3 orchestras, but we don't have like really cello competitions. And I think that this one of the greatest mistakes on our culture here, because this is one of the greatest mistakes in our culture here, because I mean I totally agree with you. It's the chance to get this type of exposure and try to figure out you in this environment, music environment. So, I mean, it's really sad in Brazil we don't have this type of competition. And talking about competition, you have like did a lot of competition in your career, right?
Yeah, I've done competitions since I was 13, and yeah, I feel like every competition I did, I learned a lot and I improved when I was preparing.
Yeah, a lot of the questions that we received on our Instagram was about this specific competition, because I mean it's Tchaikovsky, but do you feel some different at the Tchaikovsky competition, or for you it was just another step on your in your building your career?
I think it was, you know, it was definitely the biggest competition I'd ever done, and I felt I did feel the pressure, especially in the final round. Because you know I had this thought that, you know, once you've made it to the finals, like you're so close to, you know being done and accomplishing what you set out to accomplish. But you know, it's still, there's so much standing in the way. You know, you have to give a great performance. So it was stressful, of course, but I tried to, I think once I got on stage, I tried to just be natural and think of it as any other competition, any other performance.
Yeah, I think that was one question that is really fun for us. That the final of Tchaikovsky was like 6 cellists, right? I think. So what was the feeling while you were waiting for the results? And do you was expecting to get the first place?
Well, it was so I don't know if I shared this on social media, but so I was in Russia with my family, actually. My mother, my grandmother, and my younger brother had traveled there to see me. And after I played in the final round, I really wanted to go to KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So there was one that was, you know, pretty close by. So we just went and walked, and you know, I called some people and just chatted with them. Some people who had watched the stream. And I was eating fried chicken, and then we came back just in time for the results. And overall, I felt pretty happy with my performance. I was not worried, you know, what would happen, because I knew that I had, I think, done my best, and I had done the best I could with the amount of preparation I put into it. So, you know, of course, your heart always starts beating very fast, but I didn't necessarily expect to win. I mean, I thought I did very well, but you know, it's of course it's not in my control. So, but I was very lucky. Yeah.
On that note, a question is like, how much of the results of a competition are luck? Because of course there's some kind of luck involved. And so in your opinion, what's the percentage of luck?
I think that I would say it's probably less than, like, how should I put this? I think it's it's probably like 10%, 10 to 20% luck. I mean, it's not like 50% luck, or it's not like playing poker or something, you know, but but there are certain luck elements, like, for example, what number you draw. Like if you draw number 1, it's difficult to play first. I know that because I drew #1 at the Apollo competition, and I just, not that I think it affected the result in the end, but it was psychologically a challenge for me to play as #1. And then there's also the question of, how the jury feels when you play. So the sort of typical wisdom is that you want to play always after their lunch break, after they've eaten a nice meal, so they'll feel in a better mood. And the worst time to play is right before the lunch break when they're very cranky. So it's like, yeah, it's like
no, that's funny. It's something that we don't think about, but that's true. And talk about the jury. After the competition, I know that the competition talked with the jury about, everything, and there was something that someone told you that was really impacting, or something that really affected your way to think about music after the competition, because the jury was huge names of the cello.
Yeah, I know. It was amazing feeling, actually, just to be able to meet all of them after the results announcement, because we were sort of together in the hall, and just to shake Misha Maisky's hand, and Jian Wang, and Truls Mork, all these people, and I didn't get the chance to talk with them so much, but it was just very nice to sort of be there with them, and just tell them. I told them, I'm such a big fan, to Misha Maisky. I've been listening to you since I was 5, and I love your Bach and stuff like that. So yeah.
Wait, you said you love Misha Maisky's Bach?
I really love. I do love his Bach, and it's not, for me, it's not stylistic in the way that I think Baroque music should be played, but I remember hearing him give a performance of the second suite at the Amsterdam Cello Biennale Festival 6 years ago, and he's just an amazing artist. When he played, you could just feel how he loved the music so much, and I think that's the most important thing when you play Bach. So.
Yeah, actually, I asked that not because I don't like it. It's mostly because, like, if you talk to any cellist, I don't think anyone would ever mention that it's the favorite record, or like one of the best recordings of Bob. I completely agree with you. Like his artistry is incredible. It's like, I don't think anyone has as much flair as he does playing the cello. It's really incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and in the first round of Tchaikovsky, we have the Bach suite, and I think that was something really challenging because, the jury, everyone has a different idea. So, I think that was really challenging to play Bach, to adjust this jury is just different from each other. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and actually, I want to tell you something funny that. I won't say who it is, but I was talking with a specific jury member, and they told me no one who played the 6th suite did it convincingly. And I was like, oh, I'm lucky I played the 3rd suite.
Yeah, that's what we talk about. It's really hard to know what they think about.
Yeah, and I think because everyone has such strong opinions about, what it means for a performance of Bach to be convincing, and also just the fact that Bach sort of it brings forward everyone's biggest weaknesses. It doesn't spare you. It's like, if you have bad string crossings, it's going to show. If you intonation is going to show. So it's just very difficult.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
I feel like Bach should be kind of banned from competitions because it's very controversial. Like, I played the first round for ARD, and from 3 juries that I talked to, so I played 3 pieces. Each one of them told me one of them was the problem, and for Bach was like Peter Wolfsbawai loved my Bach, and then I talked to Torleif Tayden, and he was like, why do you do that bowing for the pedal G? It's like, after you did that, like I just stopped paying attention or something like that, you know. So like it really should be banned from competitions.
Yeah, I mean, Zlatan, I have one tricky question for you. Why do you choose the third suite? Because I mean, you have like this amazing level to perform a great sixth suite that you know is like, oh, the hardest suite. But why do you choose the third?
Well, you know, I'm going to be very honest with you because I think it's interesting. I was going to play the sixth suite, but then they gave us the option to change our repertoire a month before the competition. So on May 13th or something, I said to myself, it's not worth it for me to have so much stress about the sixth suite, because like the Sarabande, you have to play the prelude and Sarabande, which I think are probably the two hardest movements in the suite, and it's already, in my opinion, the hardest suite. So I was like, okay, I just want to play something I know well. So the third suite I know well, and something I know I can manage without too much practice. So to be honest, it was a very practical decision to choose the third suite.
No, but I mean, it makes all the sense. But it's something that when I mean, last year, I think that was almost exactly year ago. Yeah, something like that. And I remember to saw your first round and thought about that because I mean, we have this type of feeling like, oh, just the last suite is the hardest, but I mean, every suite has these different ideas that you can develop in a high level, you know. So it was really special to see you playing the third suite for me, really. I mean, for all of us, because I don't know if you know that, but Pauta is this product that we made with the three of us, cellists from Brazil in the São Paulo University. So we are all together seeing the Tchaikovsky competition like it was the final of World Cup, you know. So for us, was really really special.
Well, thank you. You're so kind. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have I mean, I think once the last question for this part, but you play a really really special cello on the Tchaikovsky competition. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was very fortunate in January of last year that a shop near Boston was able to loan me this cello made by Lorenzo Storioni in 1783, and I was lucky. I got to play on it for 6 months, and then I got the chance to play on it in the competition, and then I had to return it afterward, and I played it for another month in October again for a couple concerts, but I haven't actually seen the cello for a while. But it was a very beautiful cello, and I'm actually searching right now for a new cello, but it's a long process. So
actually, I got to try that cello. It's from Carriage House, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I got to try that cello when I was actually like getting a Chinese cello to borrow and play a Storioni. It was like very yeah, it's pretty. And I think they also had a Grancino that was very nice, but the Storioni was by far my favorite. Wait, so, and actually the last question is mine actually. So
can I just say something?
Yeah, go.
Yes. At the Tchaikovsky competition, we saw like really special cellos there. And do you have some thoughts about how the instrument can affect your performance, principally in a competition that everything is enjoyed?
I would say that the instrument, I think, in the end, is just a tool, and I think that Santiago Canyon Valencia, he is such an amazing cellist, and I think he is sort of he demonstrated that, because out of all the people in the finals, he was playing on the least expensive cello. He was playing on a modern cello actually, and he still played phenomenally, and I think. But however, I would say that the difference that the instrument makes, a great instrument, is that in a performance like that, especially a high pressure situation, the great instruments can just give you something, this extra energy, extra inspiration that that's other cellos can't. So especially for solo playing, to just draw on that the inspiration of the cello can often be a very powerful thing for the audience and for the performer.
Yeah, totally. So we have this last question for this first part. So, Guilherme.
So I wanted to ask you because, like, in Brazil, I'd never got the chance really to play chamber music, and my first chamber group was pretty much when I was 18, when I started my undergrad in Indiana. So for you, what's the importance of chamber music, like, on the formation of a musician? Because I know that you've done a lot of chamber music. I've played a lot with Kate, and she, like, every piece that I've played, she's played with you before. So I get to know how much chamber you've done before.
That's so funny. Oh yeah, that's right. I think that chamber music is so important for developing as a musician, and that's because I think every piece that you play is chamber music. Even solo Bach is chamber music. It's just chamber music with yourself, because you still have to feel that there are different voices that are interacting with each other, and the chords, the balance, the sense of hierarchy. It's very important. So just, I think playing chamber music, it just trains you to be more aware of how to experience music when there are many things going on. And then that, of course, will help you with your solo playing. And when you play with an orchestra, you're able to understand the music as a whole.
And also, she told me to ask you about chi.
About chi, yes, yeah, chi, yeah. Say hi to Kate for me, yeah. It's been a while. Chi, yeah, I would. Well, I mean, I think that like the vocabulary can shift for what it is, but basically it's just the energy that you feel when you play, that physical energy that flows through you, that allows you to draw the bow beautifully. And also it's the connection between two people when they play chamber music, that they're really playing the phrase with the same idea. So I don't know what you would call that, but for me, chi is like, just the fundamental energy. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like Goku in Super Saiyan, Dragon Ball. Oh. Super Saiyan in the stage on the cello.
Nice.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that this type of thing, like the importance of control this type of energy is really important, principally in this high level performance. I think to control the energy, not just for you, but for the public, because I think that it's really great to have this control the energy, to control what the public will feel in such parts. So I think that's something really, really great, really actually a little bit funny.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of people now talking about the flow when you play, and I think that's a lot to do with it. You just on stage, you just stop thinking about technical stuff, because then it just distracts you from that real, like, thread. Like, Timati taught me a lot about the thread that you have to have during when in the performance, to really communicate everything that you want to do in a very organized way, not just like. I remember, like, one of my first lessons, he told me, like, yeah, Gui, you played that beautifully, but I just don't feel anything. And that kind of stuck with me, and I think it has to do a lot to do with this kind of, like, thread that I got to learn a lot with him.